She thought he was just someone to laugh at, dismissing him without a second thought. But she had no idea who he really was, or the power he held over her life. Within an hour, her world would turn upside down, leaving her with a regret she'd never forget. This is a story of judgment and unexpected consequences you won't want to miss. Please don't forget to subscribe and let us know where you're listening from. The sun was bright over Central Park, and Darnell leaned back on a bench, sipping his coffee. The laughter of children filled the air, their carefree joy reminding him of the innocence he often admired. A mother sat not too far from him, seemingly oblivious to the world around her. Her attention was fixed on her phone, while her young son Eli wriggled impatiently in her lap. Darnell took a second glance. Something didn't feel right about the scene. The little boy looked pale, thin, and tired. After a few minutes, Eli managed to break free, sprinting toward the playground with newfound freedom. Lisa barely noticed, muttering a dismissive, "Stay close, Eli," her eyes glued to her phone. Darnell shook his head. How could a mother be so detached? Moments later, Darnell heard screams from the direction of the fountain. His heart pounded as he leapt up, racing toward the commotion. There, thrashing in the water, was little Eli. Several teenagers looked on, shocked and unsure of what to do. Without hesitation, Darnell jumped into the shallow fountain, lifting Eli's small, soaked body from the water. The boy wasn't breathing. Darnell's mind raced, and he immediately began CPR, praying with each chest compression. Finally, Eli spluttered and coughed up water, blinking as his eyes opened. Relief washed over Darnell, but his relief was short-lived. Lisa, now aware of the situation, stormed over. Instead of showing gratitude, she scowled, yanked Eli from Darnell's arms, and glared at him with open hostility. "What would you know about taking care of a child?" she sneered. "You people always acting like you know everything." Darnell was stunned. He had saved her son's life, yet here he was, standing in the face of blatant prejudice. Lisa turned on her heel, her friends snickering beside her as they walked away, leaving Darnell feeling humiliated and heartbroken. As Lisa marched away from the park, clutching Eli close, her mind drifted back to a time before life had twisted her dreams into anger. Growing up in Marion, a quiet town nestled by the New Jersey woods, she had spent her teenage years dreaming of big cities and bright futures. Back then, life had felt boundless. She'd imagined herself as a college graduate, maybe even a business owner, or anything that could get her out of Marion. She was going to live a life where no one would call her small-town Lisa. Her dreams were so close at one point. She'd packed her bags, left her family's modest home, and moved to Rutgers University, stepping into the bustling campus with hope brimming in her eyes. But things didn't go as planned. College was harder than she'd anticipated. The classes were demanding, the bills never ending, and soon her savings ran dry. After 2 semesters, she dropped out, ashamed and uncertain about her future. The vibrant world she thought was waiting for her now seemed indifferent, even harsh. Back in Marion, Lisa reconnected with her high school sweetheart, Tom. He was her safe place, the person who still saw the confident, ambitious girl she had once been. Tom came from a well-to-do family. His father owned a construction business, and Tom had a steady job lined up from the start. The future he offered her seemed easy and secure, a path she couldn't afford to ignore. Before long, Lisa and Tom moved into a small home together in Marion. Life felt stable, even a little bright again. Within a year, they married, and shortly afterward, Eli was born. Tom adored Eli, doting on him with a father's joy and pride. To Lisa, he was the spark she needed, a reminder that love and family might fill the empty spaces her dreams had left behind. But as Eli grew, cracks started to show in her marriage. Tom's work kept him away, sometimes for weeks at a time. He started coming home late, the smell of alcohol lingering, his words sharp with irritation. The arguments started as whispers behind closed doors, but before long, they turned into shouting matches that echoed through the house. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't seem to agree on anything anymore. Not about parenting, not about money, not even about dinner plans. One cold evening during another one of their late-night fights, Tom snapped. "Maybe if you hadn't quit school, you wouldn't be so miserable all the time." His words cut deep, reopening wounds she thought she'd buried. But Tom's accusations only grew sharper, and Lisa threw hers back with equal force. The love that had once united them had soured, turning into a bitter cycle of blame and resentment. By the time Eli was 2, their marriage had crumbled beyond repair. When the divorce papers came, the court granted Tom full custody of Eli, citing his financial stability and the support network his family provided. Lisa was left with nothing but her anger and an empty home. The thought of losing her son was more than she could bear, and the bitterness inside her bubbled up like a dark wellspring. She was Eli's mother. She had carried him, nurtured him, loved him. How could a court decide that she wasn't fit to raise her own child? One night, consumed by the dread of separation, Lisa made a decision that would change her life forever. With nothing but a suitcase and Eli's favorite blanket, she slipped away under the cover of darkness, heading straight for Jersey City. She found a small, dimly lit apartment on the edge of town, where the rent was low, and anonymity was almost guaranteed. Life in Jersey City was a far cry from what she'd once imagined for herself. She found work where she could, sometimes as a waitress, sometimes in temporary office jobs that never paid enough to cover the bills. There were nights when she'd stay up, watching Eli sleep beside her, feeling a pang of guilt as she thought about the life she had taken him from. But her anger toward Tom and the system that had taken her son away always overshadowed that guilt. In her mind, she had done the only thing she could. Over the months, the stress of their precarious life took its toll. With each passing day, Lisa became more withdrawn, her once hopeful outlook buried under layers of resentment. She found herself buying small comforts, cigarettes, the occasional drink, little luxuries to dull the ache of her losses. Friends were few and far between. Her family back in Marion had long disapproved of her choices, and reaching out now would only add salt to the wound. Eli grew up surrounded by his mother's quiet bitterness. She loved him fiercely, but her struggles meant there were days he went without a full meal. Days he played alone in their small apartment, while Lisa worked to make ends meet. Sometimes she'd take him to the park to give him a semblance of a normal childhood, but the sight of other families laughing, unburdened, only deepened her anger. She'd lost everything for her son, yet life only seemed to repay her sacrifice with hardship and loneliness. Back in the present, as she clutched Eli close, Lisa steeled herself against the judgment of others. In her mind, she had done what any loving mother would have done. She had fought to keep her child. And if anyone dared to judge her for it, they clearly had no idea what sacrifice truly meant. Later that day, Lisa was deep in thought as Eli, now recovered, wandered off once more. Lost in her own world, she didn't realize her son had drifted toward the busy street. A screech of tires jolted her out of her daze. Across the road, Eli stood wide-eyed in front of an SUV, narrowly avoiding a horrific accident. A woman had slammed on the brakes just in time. Furious and shaken, she picked Eli up, her eyes blazing as she scanned the park for his mother. "Where is this child's mother?" she yelled, spotting Lisa. Lisa stormed over, grabbing Eli from the woman's arms. "You can't tell me how to raise my child," she snapped, as the bystanders around them murmured in disapproval. Unmoved, the woman took a quick photo of Lisa's license plate as she left the scene, dialing child services to report her. The dim light in Lisa's apartment flickered as the sun dipped below the skyline, casting shadows across the worn furniture and cluttered surfaces. The walls were thin, and the muffled sounds of city life seeped through, filling the small space with an incessant hum. Eli was finally asleep on the sagging couch, his small, frail body curled up, a threadbare blanket clutched in his tiny fists. Lisa was exhausted, her head pounding as she slumped into a chair, letting out a deep sigh. Suddenly, a loud knock shattered the fragile quiet. Her heart jumped, and dread pooled in her stomach. She wasn't expecting anyone. She stared at the door, hoping whoever it was would go away. But the knock came again, this time more insistent. After a tense pause, she stood, smoothing down her shirt and brushing off her hands. She opened the door a crack, her body tense with unease, and froze when she saw the figure standing on her doorstep. There he was, Darnell, the man from the park, now wearing a badge clipped to his shirt, the words Child Services catching the dim light of the hallway. "Lisa Adams?" he asked, his tone calm yet formal. Lisa's pulse quickened. The memories of their encounter in Central Park came rushing back, the humiliation, the anger. She looked him up and down, disbelief clouding her features. Of all people, why him? We've had reports of neglect, Darnell continued, his eyes steady on hers, and I'm here to check on your son's welfare. Lisa's defenses shot up. She crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe as if to bar him entry. Neglect? She scoffed, her voice laced with bitterness. So now you're here to police how I raised my child? Darnell's expression remained calm, though his gaze flickered past her to the apartment behind her. Ma'am, I just need to ensure your son is safe. This isn't personal. But to Lisa, it felt deeply personal. She glared at him for a moment, but she couldn't avoid the inevitable. She stepped aside reluctantly, and Darnell entered, his calm demeanor in stark contrast to the turmoil roiling inside her. As he surveyed the apartment, Darnell took in the scene carefully. Cigarette packs were stacked haphazardly on the table, and the faint smell of stale smoke clung to the air, mingling with the sour scent of unwashed dishes piled high in the sink. There were scattered toys and bits of trash on the floor, and near the couch, he noticed an empty box of instant noodles, remnants of Eli's last meal. The sparse kitchen shelves, dotted with a few cans and stale bread, told a silent story of scarcity. When his eyes fell upon Eli, still asleep on the couch, his expression softened, but only briefly. Eli's little face was pale, his cheeks hollow, and his small frame looked almost swallowed by the oversized blanket. Darnell could see the signs: malnourishment, neglect, perhaps worse. Can you tell me about Eli's meals, his daily routine? Darnell asked gently, turning back to Lisa. Lisa crossed her arms tighter, her face a mix of defiance and embarrassment. We're fine. I do what I can, she replied, her voice hard. You don't know how hard it is, how I've struggled to take care of him on my own. Darnell nodded, but his eyes betrayed a sadness, a concern that Lisa couldn't ignore. I'm sure you're doing your best, he said, his voice low and even. But Eli deserves more than just survival, Lisa. He deserves stability, health, and safety. His words landed like a punch to her gut. She knew deep down he was right, but admitting that felt like surrender. Her pride, the one thing she clung to, wouldn't let her yield so easily. And where were you when I was fighting to keep him? She shot back, her voice rising, bitterness pouring out. Everyone said I wasn't good enough, that I couldn't take care of my own child. They tore my life apart, and now you're here to finish the job. Darnell listened patiently, letting her anger spill out. When she paused, catching her breath, he spoke with a calm firmness that cut through her defenses. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, he began, his tone gentle but unyielding. But this isn't about the past, Lisa. It's about what Eli needs now. And right now, he needs more than this. He gestured subtly to the room around them, a silent witness to the hardship etched into every corner. She stood there, her emotions simmering beneath the surface, her eyes flickering to Eli's sleeping form. In that moment, her anger faded to something else, a helplessness she couldn't bear to confront. Darnell took a deep breath and pulled out a notepad, his eyes scanning the room once more. Lisa, I have to document the condition of your home and Eli's health. If there's any way we can work together to improve this, I'd like to help. Lisa scoffed again, but her voice was softer, laced with exhaustion. Help? Like you know what I've been through? Darnell hesitated, choosing his words carefully. No, I don't know everything you've been through, he admitted. But I know that right now I can help Eli. And maybe I can help you too. Silence hung heavy between them. For a fleeting moment, Lisa considered opening up, allowing him to understand the depth of her struggle. But pride won out, and she forced her face into a mask of defiance, turning away from him. Darnell sighed, jotting down notes as he took in the state of the apartment once more. The signs were unmistakable, and his heart ached for the little boy curled up on the couch, unaware of the storm brewing around him. After a final look at Eli, he spoke softly. We'll be in touch, Lisa. I hope for your sake and Eli's that we can find a way forward. As he turned to leave, Lisa felt a pang of fear slice through her anger. She watched him walk out, knowing that her life was unraveling faster than she could hold it together. She shut the door and leaned against it, feeling the weight of everything she'd lost pressing down on her. For the first time, she felt the sting of fear mingling with regret, and she knew that the knock on her door had signaled something far more permanent than she was prepared to face. As part of the investigation, Darnell's team ran a background check on Lisa, uncovering a troubling history. Not only had she absconded with Eli against court orders, but she also had a record of drug use that she had tried to hide. The evidence painted a clear picture. Lisa was not fit to care for her son. As Darnell gathered his findings, he couldn't shake the look on Eli's face that day in the park. It was a look of innocence that deserved protection, and he knew what he had to do. The day began with a quiet stillness, an ordinary morning where Lisa had no inkling of what lay ahead. She paced her cramped apartment, picking up a discarded toy here, straightening a cushion there, her mind elsewhere. She kept glancing toward Eli, who was playing quietly by himself, his eyes half-lidded with the same exhaustion that clung to her. A loud knock shattered the silence, and Lisa's heart lurched. She froze, gripping the back of the chair, her mind racing. She hadn't heard from Child Services since Darnell's visit, and though she tried to convince herself they'd let her be, a gnawing fear had lingered ever since. She opened the door cautiously, but the sight that greeted her made her blood run cold. Darnell was there, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. Behind them was another figure she hadn't seen in years, Tom, her ex-husband, standing in the hallway, his eyes trained on her with a mixture of sadness and relief. "Lisa," Darnell began, his voice calm but firm, "we're here to take Eli." Her whole world seemed to crumble in an instant. Her knees went weak, but she forced herself to stand tall, clinging to the doorframe. You can't just take him," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Tom stepped forward, his face etched with sorrow. "Lisa, please," he said, his tone soft yet steady. "This isn't good for him. He deserves better than this." In a desperate attempt to protect what little she had left, Lisa stepped in front of Eli, shielding him from their view. "No, I am his mother. I raised him. You can't just take him from me." But Darnell's eyes softened as he spoke, his voice low. "Lisa, this is about giving Eli a stable, healthy life. We've seen the conditions and we know the situation. This is for his well-being." Her defenses began to falter, her face a mask of shock and anger as she glanced between Darnell and Tom. She felt the weight of her choices, the neglect, the bitterness, the resentment, all bearing down on her as though they had finally caught up. But she couldn't lose Eli. Not now. "Please, just give me one more chance," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I'll do better. I'll fix everything." But her words fell into silence. The officers exchanged glances, and then Darnell nodded, signaling them forward. They moved carefully, with a gentleness that almost broke her heart further as they approached Eli, who looked up in wide-eyed confusion. Tom knelt down, his hands shaking as he reached out for his son. "Eli, come here, buddy. It's okay. Dad's here." Eli glanced between his parents, his small brow furrowed as he tried to understand what was happening. Slowly, he took a step toward Tom, his little hands slipping into his father's as Tom enveloped him in a tight embrace. Tears streamed down Tom's face as he held Eli close, whispering promises Lisa couldn't hear. Watching this, Lisa felt her heart shatter. The walls she had built around herself, the anger, the resentment, the bitterness, crumbled in that moment. For the first time, she could see her life through Eli's eyes, a young boy deprived of his childhood, his innocence stripped away by her own mistakes. As they prepared to leave, one of the officers gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us. There are charges pending against you." Lisa's gaze dropped to the floor, her body feeling as if it had been hollowed out. Her mind flashed through every memory, every decision, every step that had brought her to this moment. She could barely process the words, child endangerment, drug possession, kidnapping, but she felt the weight of them pressing down, each accusation a reminder of her failures. With her hands trembling, she allowed herself to be led toward the door. She turned once, catching a final glimpse of Eli as he clung to Tom, and a wave of regret surged through her. The reality of her choices hit her like a tidal wave, the strength of it almost taking her breath away. Her pride, her bitterness, her refusal to accept help, it had all cost her the most precious thing she'd ever had. As she was led outside, the bright daylight felt harsh, almost blinding. As she was ushered into the back of a police car, the world seemed surreal, distant, as if she were watching her life unravel from a place outside herself. She could feel eyes on her, neighbors watching from their windows, passers-by with sympathetic glances. Her cheeks burned, but she kept her head down, the realization of her mistakes carving a hollow ache in her chest. Inside the car, the reality of it all settled in like a heavy blanket. For the first time, she let herself feel the bitter sting of regret without trying to mask it with anger. She thought of the life Eli would now have with Tom, a life she hadn't been able to provide, no matter how desperately she had clung to him. Her mind replayed scenes of missed opportunities, of moments where she could have chosen differently, each memory laced with the aching knowledge that it was too late. As the car began to move, Lisa pressed her hand against the glass, her eyes misting as she watched Tom carry Eli toward his car, his arms wrapped protectively around his son. She whispered, barely audible, "I'm sorry, Eli." In that moment, Lisa knew her life would never be the same. She could only hope that somewhere down the line, Eli would remember the mother who had tried, however imperfectly, to love him. But for now, all she had was the cold, unyielding reality of her choices and the haunting knowledge that, in trying to hold on too tightly, she had lost everything. In her cell, Lisa was haunted by memories of Eli. Every night she replayed her choices, wondering if there had been a moment when she could have turned things around. She realized too late that her bitterness had stolen her son's childhood, that her anger had blinded her to her responsibilities. So, what do you think? Could things have turned out differently, or was this ending inevitable? If you were in her shoes or his, how would you have responded? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to know what you would have done. Please subscribe for more narratives.